The woods offered no refuge for those attempting to outrun their past. She stumbled repeatedly over exposed roots, her lungs burning with ragged gasps. Echoing from the darkness behind her were the voices of the village elders, their torches casting the autumn timber into a bewildering maze of dancing shadows. After 17 years of fragile calm, they had finally resolved to complete the transaction she had interrupted as a child. She carries the mark, the head elder's voice cut through the trees. The covenant demands fulfillment. Her hand flew instinctively to her throat, where a silver crescent moon-shaped scar curved, the clear sign of an offering disrupted. She remembered the night at age 7, when she had knelt in the village square, presenting her small neck to the blackness, whispering the plea her grandmother had taught her, "Take my blood. Spare my people." But the vampire who had materialized from the shadows had not taken. Instead, he had simply marked her. His claw drew a single precise line, and then he vanished, leaving one command: grow strong. 10 years later, her grandmother's final confession had shattered her world. The elders had originally intended to use Isla's sacrifice to forge a darker pact, one designed to enslave the vampire lord to their service perpetually. Her incomplete offering had ruined their malicious plan, leaving the village without the power or protection they craved. Now, they hunted her to force the original ceremony to its completion. Era burst through a dense thicket of blackthorn, thorns tearing her cloak, and pulled up short. The forest abruptly ended at a cliff's precipice. Below, the valley stretched out in a silver expanse under the moonlight, and at its core stood a manor, a crown of bones rising from the mist. All Gothic spires and shattered windows, it was hauntingly beautiful in its decay. No escape for you now, girl. The elder emerged directly behind her, four henchmen flanking him, bearing heavy iron chains. You will uphold the compact. Your blood for his lifelong servitude. The village is in dire need of protection from the Vulov house. I will not be your sacrificial pawn a second time. Era's voice trembled, yet she stepped backward until her heels were at the cliff's edge. Better the fall than their altar. Dramatic. The new voice resonated from everywhere and nowhere, a dark velvety sound that made the hairs on her neck stand up, but his next word was a dismissal: unnecessary. He materialized between her and the elders like smoke given tangible form. He was impossibly tall, cloaked in a coat that had clearly witnessed centuries. His hair fell silver white to his shoulders, framing a countenance too flawless to be anything but predatory. But it was his eyes that stilled her heart, ancient gold fixed intently on her throat where the scar shone. Lord Constantine. The elder instantly dropped to his knees. The girl is yours. The compact was fulfilled the instant I marked her. Constantine's voice deepened into a lethal growl that seemed to vibrate through the earth. You offered a child's blood to save your pitiful village. I took her choice instead. A far more uncommon gift. The agreement was concluded 17 years ago. He then added, but the Vulov attacks are your village's concern, not mine. I owed you nothing more than that single act of mercy. He turned slightly, his profile against the moon sharp enough to wound. However, the girl is now of age, she may bargain for herself. The elder's face turned deep purple. She possesses nothing too. She possesses her consent. Constantine's gaze found Era's, and a flicker of recognition passed between them, making her scar burn with a profound cold. Which, unlike some, I will not seize by force. Understanding slammed into her. He hadn't marked her to stake a claim, but to shield her. A child put forward by adults who should have been her protectors. The deal hadn't been broken, it had been cleverly subverted. He had granted her 17 years to grow into something other than a victim. Come, Isla. He extended one pale hand. She noticed his fingers bore similar, numerous scars, marks from countless interrupted offerings. You have no need to fear me. You never did. That was the very point. She looked from the elders to the vampire who had subtly guided her life. Behind Constantine, the ruined manor stood like a silent promise, a place unreachable by the village, outside anyone's immediate grasp. Era took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, cool, gentle, and utterly inhuman. The elders screamed in protest, but Constantine moved and suddenly they were plunging. The cliff rushed past in a disorienting blur of rock and starlight. He landed, cradling her against his chest, in the valley below, silent as the grave. Welcome, he murmured, already walking toward the distant manor, to the only sanctuary I can offer. It carries a considerable price. From you, she needed to know. His smile was sad and cryptic. From those who will want to take back what I gave you. The manor swallowed them whole. Era had expected only neglect and dust, but Constantine's refuge defied abandonment. As they passed through the immense hall, hundreds of candles instantly flared to life, their light reflecting in mirrors that scaled 3 stories to a vaulted ceiling frescoed with faded images of angels and demons locked in eternal, exhausting combat. How long have you dwelled here? She slipped free from his arms, needing space, needing to comprehend the being who had claimed her childhood with a single merciful wound. 243 years in this particular crypt. Give or take a decade. Constantine shucked off his coat, revealing a white shirt belonging to a bygone century. Time becomes rather liquid after the first 100. He moved through the hall with the fluidity of water, effortlessly lighting a fire in a hearth vast enough to stand inside. The orange light etched his features into sharp relief, revealing details she'd missed in the forest. The unnatural cessation between his motions, the way his eyes never quite closed, the absence of breath beneath his chest. Proof. He made no effort to hide his nature. You're observing me. A flicker of amusement crossed his face. Ask. Do you require feeding? The question was blunt and purely practical. If she were to remain even a single night, she had to understand the constraints. Yes. He settled into a chair with unearthly grace. But not from you and never without explicit consent. The mark I gave you is not an ownership claim, it is a protective ward. No vampire can forcibly take your blood while it remains. You are, arguably, the safest human in the realm. Era's hand rose to her throat. Why did you do that? Because 7-year-old girls should not be presented like a fine vintage to monsters. His voice turned icy. Your elders repulsed me. They always have. I maintain arrangements with a house in the city, volunteers who appreciate the exchange. I haven't been on a hunt in over a century. She believed him. There was a weariness in his tone when he spoke of sustenance, suggesting a being tired of taking. She explored the room, running her fingers over book spines in 6 different tongues, pausing at a painting of a woman in medieval attire. The resemblance to Constantine was striking. The same sharp bone structure, the same gold eyes. My sister. He appeared beside her, silent as any shadow. Irina. She chose mortality over endless life. Died happy at 37. He touched the frame with a kind of reverence. You mourn her every day for 200 years. She warned me I'd come to regret immortality. She was correct. Before she could reply, the windows shattered. Glass rained into the room in a glittering tempest. Constantine moved faster than sight, pulling her behind him as 3 figures crashed through the destroyed frames. Vampires. She knew instantly from their predatory elegance, their eyes catching the firelight like a cat's. Constantine the Merciful. The lead vampire, a woman dressed in modern leather, offered a smile with too many teeth. Still playing the saint. Tatiana. His voice lowered to a lethal, dangerous purr. You have violated my sanctuary. Depart immediately. We are not here for you, old man. Tatiana's gaze located Era, and a new hunger flashed across her face, not for blood but for something far deeper. We are here for the marked one. The girl who broke a covenant and destabilized the territorial balance. Do you comprehend what your incomplete offering has done? 3 villages were ravaged by rogue vampires last winter. Protection pacts disintegrated. All because you decided to play the hero. Ice spread through Era's veins. What? Your interrupted sacrifice created a loophole, Tatiana continued, circling like a shark. If a village's offering is refused, the vampire lord owes them nothing. But if it is incomplete, the debt remains unsettled, and the protection is undefined. Every vampire in the territory has been fighting over the resultant chaos. Constantine shifted, entirely blocking Tatiana's view of Era. The girl is under my protection. Touch her, and I will invoke the blood accords. You wouldn't dare. You are one vampire against the entire Vilov house. Try me. The air temperature plunged. Frost crept across the walls and the mirrors, even freezing the edge of Tatiana's confident smile. Power radiated from Constantine like raw energy, ancient, absolute, and utterly terrifying. Era understood in that instant why the elders had been so desperate to bind him. He was not merely a vampire. He was a force of nature barely contained in human-like form. Tatiana retreated a single step, then another. House Volkov demands compensation. The girl will complete her offering, or we take her bloodline as payment. You have 3 days to choose, Constantine's sanctuary or her life. They vanished through the broken windows, leaving only the wind and the fragmented glass. Era's legs gave way. She sank into the chair Constantine had vacated, her mind spinning. I caused that. The attacks. The deaths. No. He knelt before her, and for the first time she saw genuine rage in his eyes. The elders caused it when they attempted to twist the child sacrifice into perpetual slavery. I caused it when I believed marking you would be enough to shield you. This is old sins coming due, not your fault. But people perished. People always perish in our world. He stood, now pacing, agitation briefly breaking through his controlled facade. The question is what follows? I can fight the Vilov house, but I cannot fight them eternally. They want you either dead or bound. I will permit neither. Then what is our course of action? He stopped, turning to face her completely. We must uncover what makes you so invaluable that they would risk a war. Your mark is unique, Era. A refused offering that still carries immense power. There is something about your blood, your potential sacrifice that they truly fear. Outside, storm clouds rapidly amassed. Thunder rolled across the valley like a looming promise. Rest tonight, Constantine said softly. Tomorrow I will teach you what is essential to survive in a world that seeks to consume you whole. And if I am incapable of learning? His smile was sharp and sorrowful. Then we both face a beautiful demise. Morning revealed the manor's true character. Era awoke in a bedroom fit for a lost princess. A four-poster bed draped in moth-eaten velvet, walls papered in faded roses. Sunlight poured through repaired windows when had he fixed them, and the aroma of coffee drifted from downstairs. The vampire brewed coffee? She found him in the library, surrounded by texts that appeared older than entire countries. He stood at the window, one hand pressed against the glass, staring at the sunrise with something akin to yearning. You cannot go outside, she realized instantly. Daylight. One of the few accurate legends. He didn't turn. The sun will not kill me, but it is deeply unpleasant. It's like internal combustion. I choose to sleep through dawn most days. He gestured toward a nearby table set for a human meal, bread, cheese, fruit. We have matters to attend to. Era sat, scrutinizing him in the morning light. He seemed more human now, almost vulnerable in his stillness. How does it happen? Becoming what you are. You are direct, aren't you? But he offered a small smile. It is an exchange of blood, performed 3 times over 3 nights. The third exchange stops the heart. Then comes the uncontrollable hunger and the final choice. Feed and complete the transformation or die permanently. Most opt to feed. Your sister did not. Irina refused the third exchange. She stated she would rather burn out completely than fade into eternity. He finally turned from the window, shadows under his eyes suggesting he hadn't rested. I honored her choice. It is all we have in the end. Choices. Why? I could not tolerate yours being stolen. Before she could form a response, the air pressure shifted. Constantine's head snapped toward the door, his body becoming predator still. They are early, he murmured. Stay behind me. The front entrance exploded inward. This time it wasn't 3 vampires. It was 10, led by a man whose presence filled the room like freezing water. Tall, dark-haired, dressed in a suit that was surely worth more than Era's entire village. His eyes were black voids, and power emanated from him in waves that made her teeth ache. Dmitri. Constantine's voice was heavy with centuries of enmity. You dare breach my sanctuary in daylight? Desperate times. Dmitri Vilov smiled, a blend of charm and pure venom. Your little pet has developed into a territorial crisis. The council has issued a decree. She will complete her offering to you within the hour, permanently binding you to her village's protection, or we will execute her for destabilizing the peace. The council holds no authority over. The council holds every authority when villages are burning. Dmitri's voice cracked like a whip. 17 settlements lost protection because of her interrupted sacrifice. Rogue vampires are turning humans without sanction. It is anarchy. You will accept the binding, or she dies and restores the balance through blood debt. Era stood, stepping around Constantine despite his warning growl. What precisely would this binding ritual accomplish? A sharp girl. Dmitri's gaze swept over her. A completed offering creates a covenant. Your blood, freely given in ritual, chains the vampire to your village's defense. They are compelled to protect it, cannot harm its citizens, and are confined to its territory. It is, fundamentally, slavery veiled in tradition. Which is why I refused it, Constantine snarled. But here is the glorious irony, Dmitri circled closer. Your mark already established a partial bond. You owe her village something, Constantine. Not full servitude but a debt. The council simply wants that debt defined and closed. Complete the offering. Accept the binding and the chaos ceases. Everyone benefits. Except him. Era looked at Constantine, seeing the truth in his rigid posture. He would be a prisoner for my protection. Precisely. Dmitri shrugged. Poetic, wouldn't you say? The merciful vampire enslaved by his own mercy. There is another path. The voice came from the back of the room, an elderly vampire woman, white-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing council robes. The girl could become one of us. A vampire cannot be bound by human offering rituals. Her transformation would void the incomplete covenant, restore balance and free Constantine from the death. Silence descended upon the room. You would turn her to save me? Constantine's voice was barely a whisper. I would offer her the choice. The councilwoman stepped forward. Miss Era, I am Magistrate Yenna. I have studied your case. Your blood carries something rare, an echo of a refused sacrifice that resonates with ancient magic. If you transformed, that echo would amplify. You would be powerful, potentially powerful enough to challenge House Volkov's territorial claims yourself. Dmitri hissed. The council would never dare. The council dares much when stability is threatened. Yenna's smile was cold. 3 options, girl. Bind Constantine through the completed offering, making him a slave. Die and pay the blood debt with your final breath. Or transform and become powerful enough to protect yourself. Era's mind raced. Every option was a trap. But one of those traps had Constantine inside it, suffering on her behalf. She couldn't allow it. No. Constantine moved between them with blinding speed. She will not choose under duress. I will accept the binding. Constantine. You have been free for 2 centuries. Era, I can endure servitude if it means you live at all. How very noble. Dmitri produced a ritual knife, silver and ancient. Shall we proceed? 1 completed offering. 1 enslaved vampire lord and peace restored. The blade gleamed in the morning light. Outside, storm clouds gathered again, the sky itself responding to the tension. Era looked at Constantine's resigned face, at the council's expectant expressions, at Dmitri's triumph. She thought of the 7-year-old girl who had knelt in the square, offering everything to save everyone. She thought of the vampire who had refused to take and had stolen nothing. Wait, she said. I have a counter-offer. I will finalize the offering, she declared, her voice firm despite the terror gripping her throat. But not to shackle him. To release him. Dmitri burst into laughter. That is not how the rite functions, girl. Is it, Yevgenia? Era turned to the magistrate. The offering requires my blood freely given and my words to define the covenant. Nowhere does it state I must demand perpetual service. What happens if I offer my blood and stipulate no conditions? The magistrate's eyes widened marginally. Theoretically, the covenant would simply fulfill itself with 0 terms. The debt would be simultaneously settled and dissolved. Absolutely not. Dmitri moved with superhuman speed, seizing Era's arm with a grip tight enough to cause bruising. The council commands. 1 moment, Constantine's voice exploded. The next instant, Dmitri was across the room, embedded in the library wall with Constantine's hand clamped around his throat. The other vampires tensed, but Yevgenia raised 1 hand, freezing them in place with clear authority. If you ever lay a hand on her again, Constantine hissed, his voice lethal. I will show you why they called me the Impaler, before I learned the concept of mercy. Enough. Yenna's voice resonated with power. The girl's proposed solution is legally sound. An offering without explicit demands dissipates the existing debt without creating a bond of servitude. Dmitri, relinquish your claim or face council sanctions for assault. House Volkov will not. House Volkov will abide by the council's judgment. Yenna's gaze was sharp enough to slice glass. Or I will launch a full inquiry into precisely how 17 villages lost protection. Someone has been actively inciting rogue attacks to force this confrontation. I wonder who. Dmitri's face went utterly blank. Then he delivered a cold, terrible smile. Very well. Let her make her pointless offering. But House Volkov will remember this insult, Constantine. We will remember how you prioritized 1 human girl over territorial stability. He vanished, not through the door but simply ceasing to exist in that location, reappearing outside. His entourage followed, tearing through the broken wall. Era watched them retreat across the valley like shadows fleeing the dawn. That, Yenna stated quietly, was exceptionally reckless, child. You have made an enemy of the most ruthless house in the territory. She saved me from becoming a slave. Constantine released the wall, leaving a crater-sized impact. That is a prize worth any enemy, perhaps. The magistrate studied Era with renewed intensity. But Dmitri does not forgive. He will find another avenue to exploit you. Be cautious about what you offer and to whom. She nodded once, then dissolved into mist, departing through the shattered architecture. A profound silence descended like a blanket of snow. You didn't have to do that. Constantine's voice was raw and heavy. I would have accepted the binding. I know. Era's hands were shaking now, the adrenaline fading. But you gave me a choice 17 years ago. I will not steal yours now. He moved toward her slowly as if approaching something uniquely fragile. Do you grasp the gravity of your actions? Dmitri will not stop. He desires total control over this territory, and I am the last independent lord in his way. Through me or through you, he will secure his advantage. Then we must ensure he gets none. She met his ancient eyes. You teach me to survive this world. I will complete the offering to absolve your debt. And together, we will discover why my blood holds such significance. Together. He spoke the word like a sacred invocation. I have not had together in a very long time. Before she could respond, the windows exploded once more. But this time it wasn't vampires, it was fire. Great plumes of flame erupted, transforming the library into an inferno within seconds. Era screamed, stumbling back as the ancient books and tapestries ignited into curtains of fire. Through the smoke she saw them, humans. The village elders wielding torches and vessels of holy water, intent on burning out the vampire. The head elder's voice boomed over the roar. Burn them both. Constantine grabbed her, pulling her low beneath the churning smoke. The catacombs. There's a tunnel network below. Can you run? Yes. A burning beam collapsed, creating a wall of fire between them. Flames leaped high. Through the heat, Era saw Constantine's face contort in sheer agony. He had said sunlight burned him internally, fire must be torment. But he was pushing through, relentlessly reaching for her. An elder emerged from the smoke, swinging an iron poker at Constantine's head. Era reacted without conscious thought. She snatched up a fallen, heavy silver candlestick and brought it down hard on the elder's skull. He dropped instantly. She had never struck anyone before. Her hands felt completely numb. Good. Constantine's voice was choked with smoke. Again if you have to. Follow me. They sprinted through the blazing manor, Constantine leading her through tight servant passages that twisted like internal organs. Behind them, the elders' voices rose in religious chants, calling for holy judgment upon the vampire and his companion. The smoke thickened and turned pitch black. Era's lungs were screaming for air. Then they were falling. Constantine had found a trapdoor, and they tumbled into cool, profound darkness, landing heavily on cold stone. Above, the fire raged, but below, in the catacombs beneath the manor, the heavy stone walls held the inferno at bay. Are you harmed? Constantine's hands were on her face, checking her shoulders for burns. His own palms were charred and blackened from pushing through the flames. Your hands will regenerate, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. He pulled her deeper into the tunnel where water dripped and centuries of dust muffled their footsteps. Vampire resilience, he corrected. But we must dress them or the burns will delay regeneration. Do you possess any knowledge of field medicine? My grandmother was a healer, Era replied. I assisted her for years. I can help if you have supplies. There is a safe room ahead. Irina insisted I maintain one when she was alive. She said I would need it someday. His laugh was a harsh, bitter sound. She was always right. They walked in silence, the burning manor fading behind them. Somewhere above, her past was turning into ash. Somewhere ahead, in the darkness, something new was beginning. Constantine's burned hand found hers, squeezing gently once. Thank you, he whispered, for the choice. The safe room was a time capsule, preserved behind a door that required Constantine's blood to open. It contained furnishings from another century, a bed with embroidered linens, shelves stocked with candles, preserved food and glass jars of medical supplies. A portrait hung on the wall, the same woman from the library, Irina but younger, laughing at something outside the frame. She prepared this after I was turned, Constantine said, sinking onto the bed, exhaustion fracturing his composed exterior. She made me swear I would maintain it for emergencies. For the nights when being immortal simply means everyone wants you dead or bound. Era located the medical kit, which was surprisingly complete with bandages, salves and instruments. Let me examine your hands. He hesitated, then extended them. The burns were horrific, flesh charred black down to the bone in places. Any human would have been screaming, yet he merely sat, watching her face as she assessed the damage. How is this possible? She kept her voice clinical, professional, just as her grandmother had taught her. You deliberately passed through direct flame. Love makes us stupid, he said lightly, though his eyes carried profound weight. Or perhaps just desperate. I wasn't going to let you burn. She cleaned the wounds with water from a sealed cistern, her hands steady despite the intimacy of the act. This close, she noticed the details, how his unburned skin was too flawless, like polished marble, the complete absence of pores, of human imperfection, and the stillness of his chest between his scattered breaths. Breathing, she realized, was a performance for her benefit, not a necessity. You aren't afraid of me, he observed. Most humans recoil. I have been marked by you since childhood. If you had wished to harm me, you've had 17 years. She applied an herbal salve that made the burns hiss violently. You didn't flinch. Besides, you took those burns to protect me. That is not the behavior of a monster. Vampires are possessive of what they claim. I have claimed nothing, he pointed out. She began wrapping his hands in clean bandages, working with the precision of years of practice. That is the difference, she countered. You gave me a ward, not a collar. A comfortable yet strange silence settled. Above them, the manor still burned. She could feel the heat through the thick stone. They were trapped here until the fire subsided and the elders departed, hours, perhaps days, in this preserved bubble of the past. Why did you refuse my blood that night? She had to know. When I was 7, you could have taken it, completed the ritual, and secured the village's protection. Instead, you marked me and walked away. Constantine's jaw tightened. You want the truth? Because I saw myself. He stood, pacing the small room like a caged predator. I was turned at 32 violently without my consent. My maker desired a companion and decided I would suffice. She fed me her blood, killed me, and when I awoke with the hunger, she presented me with a girl, perhaps 14, and told me to feed or perish. Era's breath hitched. I fed. His voice was flat. I chose existence over moral rectitude. And that girl's face has haunted me for 200 years. So, when I saw you, this tiny child kneeling in the dirt, offering your throat because adults dictated it, I could not do it. I would not be the creature who taught you that powerless sacrifice was a virtue. So you marked me instead. Made you untouchable by our kind. Gave you time to grow into someone who could choose for herself. He turned back to her, and the raw vulnerability in his expression made her chest ache. I thought that would be sufficient. That you would live your mortal life, and I would have one choice I didn't regret. But the elders twisted it. Dmitri weaponized it. And now you are here, trapped underground with a monster, because I was selfish enough to desire one pure thing in my long, bloody existence. Era finished wrapping his second hand, then stood, closing the distance between them. You are not a monster. I have killed to feed. I have ended lives. You have also spent 2 centuries trying not to. She placed one hand on his chest, over the place where his heart no longer beat. My grandmother taught me that goodness is not what we are. It is what we choose every single day in spite of what we are. You chose mercy. You continue to choose it. His bandaged hand rose to cover hers. And you? What do you choose, Era? The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken possibilities. She was acutely aware of everything. The coolness of his skin, the way he studied her as if she were a puzzle he desperately needed to solve, the fact that they were alone in a room with a bed and hours to pass. I choose to trust you, she said quietly. For now, that is all I can promise. Something flickered in his eyes, relief perhaps, or even disappointment. For now is more than I deserve. A rumble shook the ceiling. Dust rained down. The fire above was spreading, consuming the manor's structural bones. They were trapped until it burned itself out, breathing recycled air, waiting in the darkness. Tell me about Irina, Era requested, moving toward the portrait. If we are stuck here, I want to know the woman who made you vow to survive. You did. Constantine sat on the bed, and Era curled into a nearby chair. And throughout the long, quiet hours of their entrapment, he painted pictures with words. His human sister, brilliant and fierce, who had watched him transform and never once flinched. Who had rejected immortality because she claimed eternity was for cowards afraid to burn brightly, and who had made him promise he would find something worth living for beyond mere survival. Have you? Era asked, as the trembling from above finally ceased, as the silence suggested the fire had died completely. Found something worth living for? Constantine's gaze found hers across the shadowed room. I'm beginning to think I have. They emerged at midnight to find the manor completely gone. Nothing remained but blackened stone foundations and ash that glowed faintly like dying embers. The elders had fled, their destructive work finalized. 2 centuries of history reduced to char and memory. Constantine stood at the edge of the ruins, his bandaged hands clenched, saying nothing. Yet Era felt his grief like a physical force. I am so sorry, she whispered. Irina's portrait. His voice broke, ragged with loss. It was the last image of her. Now it is ash. Before she could reply, a sound split the night. Not human, not quite animal, a howl that made her bones vibrate. Through the smoke-hazed moonlight, figures emerged from the forest. Vampires, but they were wrong somehow, moving with a jerky, animalistic frenzy. Rogues. Constantine pulled her quickly behind him. Damn it. Dmitri sent them. Newly turned, their minds still shattered. There were 6 of them, their eyes wild, their mouths stained with recent feeding. They circled the ruins like a pack of wolves. Era understood instantly, this was not just an attack, it was a message. Behold what happens when you defy House Volkov. Can we fight them? She scanned the ruins looking for any kind of weapon. I can, he stated. He shed his coat, and she saw the predator beneath the gentleman. You must run. There is a village 3 miles east. Seek sanctuary with the humans. I will not abandon you. Era. A rogue struck. They moved as a pack, inhumanly fast, crashing into Constantine with enough force to splinter stone. He fought like liquid death, all grace and brutal violence, tearing into them with hands that were still healing. But he was 1 against 6 and they felt no pain or fear. One rogue slipped past him, lunging for Era, its face, a child's face perhaps 16 before the turning, twisted into a monstrous snarl. She snatched up a piece of debris, a half-melted iron candlestick, and swung. It connected with the rogue's skull, and the vampire stumbled, not hurt but momentarily surprised. That instant of hesitation was all it took. Constantine was there, moving like lightning, snapping its neck with a sound like breaking branches. Behind you! Era screamed. 2 rogues had flanked him. Constantine spun, but one caught his shoulder, its fangs sinking deep. He roared. The sound was ancient and terrible. He ripped the vampire off, taking a chunk of his own flesh with it. Black blood sprayed in the moonlight. Era's mind raced. 6 vampires, 1 wounded Constantine and herself. They needed an edge. She scanned the ruins for anything useful, and her eyes caught on something. The remains of Irina's portrait. The frame was still partially intact, covered in silver leaf. Silver. The frame was silver. She ran for it, dodging a rogue's grasping hand, and tore the frame apart. Pieces of silver came away in her hands, sharp, jagged shards. Not much but enough. She sprinted back to where Constantine was grappling with 3 rogues at once, his bandaged hands leaving trails of blood. Catch. She tossed him a piece of silver. He snatched it from the air, understanding immediately. Silver couldn't kill vampires, that was a myth, but it burned them and inhibited their regeneration. He plunged it into the nearest rogue's eye, and the creature shrieked, stumbling back. Era continued throwing pieces, and Constantine continued using them, fighting with a precision born of centuries of survival. But it wasn't enough. They were overwhelming him through sheer numbers, dragging him down. One rogue broke free of the melee and charged Era, its young face twisted with hunger. Era didn't think, she grabbed the last sharpest shard of silver and slashed her own palm open. Bright red blood welled instantly, and the scent of it stopped every vampire mid-motion. That's right, she stated, holding up her bleeding hand, the crescent scar on her throat gleaming. I am the marked one. The refused sacrifice. My blood is what you are all fighting over. Want it? Come and take it. The rogues turned from Constantine as one, drawn to her like moths to a flame. But they did not attack. They stopped, confusion warring with hunger on their broken faces. What are you doing? Constantine's voice was raw with panic. Watch. Era kept her bleeding hand raised, feeling instinct guiding her. The same instinct that had made a 7-year-old girl kneel and offer herself. You can smell it, can't you? My blood. It's different. The girl rogue whimpered, swaying. It calls, sings, but I can't. The mark. Understanding crashed through Era. The ward Constantine had given her wasn't just protection from forced feeding. It resonated in her blood itself, making her untouchable to their kind. The rogues could smell. Her want her, but some primal vampire instinct prevented them from taking. Without permission. That's right. She stepped forward and the rogues retreated. You can't. But he can. She gestured to Constantine, still bleeding from the shoulder wound. So, here's what's going to happen. You leave. Now and tell Dmitri that his pets failed or I let him feed from me and a vampire who's tasted. Marked blood becomes very, very hard to kill. She had no idea if that was true. But the rogues didn't know either. The girl rogue hissed, torn between hunger and fear. Finally she turned and fled. Into the forest. The others followed, their howls fading into the night. Silence fell. That, Constantine said faintly, was either brilliant or insane. Probably both. Era's legs gave out. She sat hard on a piece of rubble. Adrenaline draining, leaving her shaking. Did I just bluff? 6 vampires with mythology? You bluffed them with truth. He crossed to her, examining her bleeding palm with a focus that made her skin prickle. Marked blood does carry power. I didn't. No rogues could sense it. You found an advantage I didn't know existed. We found it. She met his eyes together. It was still holding her hand, his thumb ghosting over her bleeding palm. The intimacy of it struck her. Suddenly him, cradling her wound. Like something precious, his face inches from hers in the moonlight. She could see her reflection in his golden eyes. I should bandage this, he murmured, but didn't. Oh, you're still bleeding too. Her free hand rose to his torn shoulder. We're both a mess. Her name on his lips was a warning and a prayer. Phew. Keep touching me? I'll forget every reason I've spent 17 years keeping distance between us. Maybe I want you to forget. The words hung in the smoke-tinged air. His expression shifted, control cracking, revealing the hunger beneath. Not for blood, she realized, for connection, for something he'd denied himself for 2 centuries of self-imposed loneliness. You don't know what you're asking. His voice dropped to a whisper. I'm a vampire. I've killed, done monstrous things, and once I let myself want you, I won't be able to stop. I'm not asking you to be human. She leaned closer, drawn by something she couldn't name. I'm asking you to be honest. Tell me you don't feel this. He closed his eyes, jaw clenched. I can't. Because I do. I felt it since you took my hand in that forest. Chose my protection over their sacrifice. Maybe longer. Maybe since the night I marked you and wondered what kind of woman you'd become. Then stop fighting it. She kissed him. It was soft at first, a question, not a demand. His lips were cool against hers, and for one terrifying moment he didn't respond. Then his control shattered. His hand slid into her hair, and he kissed her back with 2 centuries of starvation, pulling her against him with a gentleness that belied his strength. Era's world arrowed to sensation. The coolness of his skin. The way he tasted like winter and smoke. The careful pressure of his hands as if she were made of glass. He kissed her like she was air and he'd been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, him from habit, her from necessity. His eyes had darkened to amber. This is dangerous, he said against her lips. Not because I'll hurt you, because I'll want to keep you forever. And forever is a very long time. I'm not afraid of forever. She traced the line of his jaw. I'm afraid of safe little lives that mean nothing. I'm afraid of being offered up and never chosen. You've chosen me every day for 17 years. Let me choose you back. He shuddered, pressing his forehead to hers. If you become what I am, then I become it on my terms. Not because I'm running, not because I'm forced, because I want to. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. You asked what I choose, Constantine. I choose. Yeah, I choose. This. Whatever this becomes, even if it means eternity, especially if it means eternity with someone who sees me as more than a sacrifice. He kissed her again, slower this time, like he was memorizing her. When he finally pulled away, his expression was raw with something between joy and terror. Then I need to teach you what eternity costs, he said quietly. The hunger, the isolation, the watching everyone you love turn to dust. If you're going to choose this, you need to know all of it. The beauty and the horror. Show me. She stood, pulling him up with her. We have time, do we? It looked at the ruined manor, at the forest where the rogues had fled. Dimitri won't stop. The council wants resolution. Your village wants revenge. And I have 3 days to decide what to do with you before House Vilov declares war. Then we use 3 days. Era's voice was steel. You teach me to survive their world. I complete my offering to free you from debt, and we find out why everyone wants to control something I chose to give you freely. His smile was sharp and beautiful. You sound like Arena. Defiant in the face of impossible odds. Good. She looked at the ashes of his home. Then at the eastern sky where dawn was beginning to break. Because I'm done being offered. It's time I took what I want. And what do you want? She kissed him once more. Brief and fierce. A life, a real one. Even if it means becoming a monster to claim it. They walked through the gray hours before dawn, heading east toward the city Constantine claimed held sanctuary. Era had never left her village's territory before the night she fled. Now she traveled beside a vampire through forest that felt older than time, learning the rules of a world she'd only glimpsed. The hunger is constant, Constantine explained as they picked their way over a fallen. Not pain exactly, more like a void where satisfaction should be. You'll always be aware of heartbeats, blood flow. Becomes background noise, but never truly silent. How do you manage it? She watched him move through the pre-dawn shadows. Graceful, economical, never quite touching the ground too heavily. Discipline routine. I feed once a week. From willing donors in the city. The blood house I mentioned, they cater to vampires who prefer consent. It's clinical, regulated, nothing like the hunts of old. It paused, helping her. Over a stream, though some vampires prefer the hunt. Dimitri, for instance, he takes willing donors, but his definition of willing is flexible. Meaning he uses influence, vampire. Charisma, we call it, a form of hypnosis. Makes humans compliant, eager, even, technically, consent, but he shrugged. I don't use it. Seems too close to force. All filed. That information away. Another piece of the puzzle that was vampire existence and the transformation itself. You said 3 exchanges over 3 nights. First exchange, I give you my blood. You'll feel stronger, heal faster, senses heighten like being drunk on life itself. Second exchange, you give me yours. The bond forms. You'll feel my emotions, sense my location. Intimate, invasive. Some humans flee during this phase. And the third, it stopped walking. They'd reached a ridge overlooking a valley where the city sprawled. Gas lamps, winking out as dawn. Approach, modern. Buildings mixed with ancient stone. The third exchange is death. I drain you completely, then feed you enough of my blood to restart your system as something new. The heart stops. Everything. Human dies. Then the hunger wakes. And you have a choice. Feed or die permanently. Have you ever turned someone? No. The word was hard. Couldn't. Not after my own turning. The thought of taking someone's mortality, their humanity. It shook his head. Verena begged me toward the end. She was dying of fever, asking me to save her. I refused. Let her die human. I've regretted it and thanked myself for it every day since. Touched his arm. Ask, will you refuse me? He turned to face her fully, and in the strengthening light, she saw every line of pain on his face. I don't know. That terrifies me because I want you to stay more than. I want to protect your humanity. That makes me a monster in truth. Or it makes you honest. It stepped closer into the space that had become theirs. Everyone wants things. You're brave enough to admit it. There's nothing brave about selfishness. There's nothing selfish about wanting connection. She cupped his face, feeling the marble coolness of his skin. You've been alone for 200 years. You're allowed to want someone to stay. It caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. The one she'd cut now, bandaged with strips from his shirt. You make it sound simple, isn't it? You want me to stay? I want to stay. Everything else is just negotiating terms. His laugh was soft, surprised. You'd negotiate eternity? Like a business contract? Why not? It's my eternity too. She pulled him down the ridge, toward the city. Come on, show me this sanctuary of yours. Teach me how to exist in your world. We have she calculated 2 days before the council's deadline. That's enough time to learn the basics, complete my offering, and plan our next move. He said it like testing new language. I'd been using I for so long, I'd forgotten our. They reached the city as the sun crested the horizon. Constantine winced, pulling a hood over his face, and led her through waking streets to a building that looked abandoned from outside but sang with life within. The blood house. Inside it was elegant velvet furniture, low lighting, soft music. Humans reclined in various states of languid satisfaction while vampires fed with clinical courtesy. No violence, no force, just transaction and mutual benefit. They pay well. Allah asked, watching a vampire feed delicately from a young man's wrist. Very, and they screen donors for health, consent, coercion. Constantine nodded to a stern-looking woman at a desk. Human. Surprisingly, Madame Orlova runs the tightest operation in the territory. If she suspects a vampire of using influence or force, they're banned permanently. Constantine. Orlova's voice was warm. It's been weeks, and you've brought a companion, the marked one. Unless I'm mistaken. Word travels fast. Dimitri's been searching the city for her, offering rewards. Studied Era with sharp eyes. You're braver than you look, girl. Most humans run from what you're walking toward. I'm tired of running. Era met her gaze steadily. He says you help vampires who prefer consent. Does that extend to transformation? Blunt. Like that. Her smile was approving. Yes. If you're considering the change, I can provide resources, literature, counseling, trial exchanges to see how your body reacts to. Many vampires turn humans impulsively, and the new vampire can't handle it. Suicide rates are high among those turned without preparation. Suicide? Era looked at Constantine. Daylight, he said, quietly. The first time you see the sun and it burns. Really burns. Some newly turned can't reconcile what they've become. They walk into dawn and end it. The casual horror of it struck her. Oh, do you bear it? Never. Seeing the sun again. You find other lights. His eyes found hers. Or you. Remember, the sun wasn't that warm. Anyway, they spent the day in Orlova's sanctuary. And Constantine taught her vampire society's architecture. The 5 great houses each, controlling territory. The council that mediated disputes, the rogues who rejected all structure, the ancient laws written in blood oaths. He taught her to sense vampires by their stillness, by the absence of warmth. He taught her the formal greetings that might save her life in court. He taught her that vampires could be killed, fire, complete blood loss, decapitation, but were remarkably hard to end otherwise. And the sun, she asked as afternoon faded, why does it burn you? We're creatures of blood now. The sun drives blood into motion, makes it burn hotter. Our blood is still cold. The clash between still blood and solar heat creates pain. He smiled wryly, though some old ones can tolerate dawn. Tolerance builds over centuries. Will I be able to walk in daylight? Eventually, maybe if you're strong enough, disciplined enough. He reached across the table where they sat. Books spread around them. But it might be decades of burning before that tolerance develops. Are you prepared to lose the sun for decades? She thought of her village, the dawn gathering she'd attended out of obligation, not joy. The sun rising over fields she'd worked without passion. I think I've been living in shadow for a long time. At least with you, the darkness has company. His hand tightened on hers. You say things that make it hard to remember. Why I should talk you out of this. Then stop trying. She stood, pulling him up. I'm not afraid of you, Constantine. Not your hunger, not your darkness, not your past. Show me what you are fully. I want to see the monster before I choose to become one. Something flickered in his eyes. Vulnerability and desperate hope tangled together. Are you certain? More certain than anything in my life. She stepped close enough to feel the coolness radiating from him. Show me. And he did. His eyes bled to full amber, pupils dilating. His lips parted and she saw his fangs extend, sharp, elegant, deadly. He moved within human speed, pinning her gently against the wall, and she felt the predator in him fully present for the first time. This, he whispered against her throat, is what I am. This hunger, this need, this thing that could drain you dry and feel nothing but satisfaction. Her pulse hammered against his lips. But you won't. No. He pulled back, eyes closing, fangs retracting with visible effort. Because I choose not to. Every day, every moment, that's all any of us are choices made. Over and over despite our nature. She pulled him down, kissed him fiercely. Then I choose you, monster and man. All of it. Even if it cost your humanity, especially then. It smiled against his lips. Because humanity gave me nothing but altars to kneel. Let me be a monster who stands. Night fell over the city and with it came the weight of decision. They sat in a private room where Lova had provided, candle lit, intimate, with ritual implements laid out on a table like surgical tools. A silver knife, ceremonial and ancient, a chalice, black glass, sealing wax. Read his blood, the tools of transformation or offering depending on what era chose. The first exchange can happen tonight, Constantine said, his voice careful, controlled. Fear. Certain, but once we begin, the bond will form. You'll feel everything I feel. There's no privacy in it. I don't want privacy from you. I'll examine the knife, its edge catching candle light. How does it work? Exactly? I open a vein wrist. Usually you drink until you feel the change taking hold. Strength. Heightened. Senses the beginning of the bond. He hesitated. It's intimate. Some compare it to sex. The vulnerability of it. And you've never done this in 200 years. Never. He met her. As I've fed from humans who consented, but I've never shared my blood. That's transformation. Territory, and I've avoided it like poison. Until now. Until you reach for her hand. Era, I need you to understand. If we complete all 3 exchanges, you'll be vulnerable during the transition. You'll die fully, then wake with the hunger. If you can't bring yourself to feed, you'll die permanently. Are you prepared to kill for your first meal? The question hung heavy. Would I have to kill? No. You'd feed until satisfied. But most new vampires lack control. They drain their first meal completely. The feral vampires could sense her, could desire her, yet some fundamental instinct prevented them from taking her without direct permission. That's correct, she announced, taking a step forward. The rogues recoiled. You cannot lay a finger on me, but he can. She motioned toward Constantine, who was still bleeding from the shoulder wound. So, here is the new arrangement. You will leave immediately and report to Dmitri that his pets failed. Or I will allow him to drink from me. And a vampire who has tasted marked blood becomes virtually impossible to destroy. She had absolutely no idea if this was true, but the rogues were too broken to know the difference. The girl rogue hissed, torn between raw hunger and visceral fear. Finally, she spun and fled into the forest. The others followed, their howls gradually fading into the night. Silence returned. That, Constantine murmured faintly, was either sheer brilliance or utter madness. Likely both. Era's legs gave way. She sank onto a piece of rubble, the adrenaline draining, leaving her severely shaking. Did I just bluff 6 vampires using mythology? You bluffed them with fundamental truth, he corrected. He crossed the distance to her, scrutinizing her bleeding palm with an intensity that made her skin tingle. Marked blood does possess potency. I wasn't aware that rogues could sense it. We found it, she met his eyes. Together. He was still holding her hand, his thumb lightly tracing her cut palm. The sudden intimacy of the gesture struck her. Him cradling her wound like something invaluable, his face mere inches from hers in the moonlight. She could see her own reflection in his golden eyes. I should bind this, he whispered, but made no move to get the supplies. You're still bleeding too. Her free hand rose to touch his torn shoulder. We are both a disaster, Era. Her name on his lips was simultaneously a warning and a plea. If you continue to touch me, I will discard every reason I've spent 17 years maintaining this distance. Maybe I want you to forget. The words hung in the smoke-scented air. His expression fractured, control visibly cracking, exposing the true hunger beneath, not for blood, she realized, but for connection, for something he had denied himself through 2 centuries of self-imposed solitude. You do not understand what you are requesting, his voice dropped to a near-silent whisper. I am a vampire. I have taken lives. I have committed monstrous acts. And once I allow myself to desire you, I will not be able to stop. I am not asking you to become human. She leaned closer, drawn by an energy she couldn't name. I am asking you to be sincere. Tell me you do not feel this. He closed his eyes, his jaw tightly clenched. I cannot because I do. I have felt it since you took my hand in that forest. Chose my protection over their sacrifice. Perhaps longer. Perhaps since the night I marked you and wondered what kind of woman you would ultimately become. Then she stopped fighting it. She kissed him. It was soft initially, a question rather than a demand. His lips were cool against hers, and for a single terrifying moment, he remained unresponsive. Then his control utterly shattered. His hand slid into her hair, and he kissed her back with the starvation of 2 centuries, pulling her tightly against him with a gentleness that betrayed his immense strength. Era's world reduced to pure sensation. The coolness of his skin, the way he tasted of winter and smoke, the careful pressure of his hands, as if she were made of thin glass. He kissed her as if she were air and he had been drowning. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, him from deep-seated habit, her from desperate need, his eyes had deepened to dark amber. This is perilous, he said against her lips. Not because I will hurt you, but because I will want to keep you forever. And forever is a vast span of time. I am not afraid of forever. She traced the line of his jaw. I am afraid of safe, meaningless lives. I am afraid of being offered up and never truly chosen. You have chosen me every day for 17 years. Let me choose you back. He shuddered, pressing his forehead against hers. If you choose to become what I am, then I will ensure it is on my terms. Not because I am fleeing, not because I am forced, but because I want to. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. You asked what I choose, Constantine. I choose you. I choose this. Whatever this becomes, even if it means eternity, especially if it means eternity with someone who sees me as more than just a sacrifice. He kissed her again, slower this time as though committing her to memory. When he finally pulled away, his expression was raw with a mixture of profound joy and terror. "Then I must teach you what eternity costs," he said quietly. "The hunger, the isolation, the sight of everyone you love turning to dust. If you are to choose this path, you must grasp all of it. The beauty and the horror. Show me." She stood, pulling him up with her. "Do we have the time?" He looked from the smoking ruins of his home to the forest where the rogues had fled. "Dmitri will not yield. The council demands an answer. Your village seeks vengeance. And I have 3 days before House Volkov declares open war. Then we shall use these 3 days." Era's voice was like steel. "You will teach me how to survive their world. I will complete my offering to free you from debt. And we will discover why everyone is so desperate to control something I chose to give you freely." His smile was sharp and incredibly beautiful. "You sound like Irina, defiant in the face of impossible odds." "Good." She looked at the ashes of his home, then toward the eastern sky where dawn was just beginning to break. "Because I am through with being offered. It is time I took what I want." "And what do you want?" She kissed him once more, brief and fierce. "A life. A real one. Even if it means becoming a monster to claim it." They walked through the gray hours before dawn, heading eastward toward the city that Constantine claimed held refuge. Era had never before ventured outside her village's territory. Now she journeyed beside a vampire through woods that felt older than recorded time, absorbing the complex rules of a world she had only ever glimpsed. "The hunger is perpetual," Constantine explained as they stepped over a fallen oak. "Not pain precisely, but an unending void where satisfaction should be. You will always be acutely aware of heartbeats, of circulating blood. It will eventually become a kind of background noise, but never truly silent. How do you manage it?" She watched him move through the pre-dawn shadows, graceful, efficient, never resting his full weight too heavily on the earth. "Discipline, routine. I feed once a week from willing donors in the city. The blood house I mentioned, they cater exclusively to vampires who prefer consent. It is clinical, regulated, nothing like the hunts of the past." He paused, helping her across a small stream. "Though some vampires favor the hunt. Dmitri, for instance. He uses willing donors, but his definition of willingness is flexible." "Meaning?" "Meaning he employs vampire charisma, a form of hypnosis. It makes humans compliant, eager, even offering technical consent." He shrugged dismissively. "I refuse to use it. It feels too close to coercion." Era filed the information away, another piece in the puzzle of vampire existence and the transformation process itself. "You mentioned 3 exchanges over 3 nights, she prompted. "The first exchange, I give you my blood. You will feel a surge of power, your senses will sharpen, healing will accelerate, like being intoxicated with life itself. The second exchange, you give me yours. The bond forms. You will perceive my emotions, sense my location. It is incredibly intimate and invasive. Some humans flee during this phase. And the third." He stopped walking. They had reached a ridge overlooking a valley where the city sprawled, gas lamps extinguishing as dawn neared. Modern towers mixed with ancient stone structures. "The third exchange is death. I must drain you completely, and then feed you enough of my blood to reinitiate your system as something new. Your heart ceases to beat. Everything human dies. Then the hunger awakens. And you face the choice, feed or die permanently. Have you ever turned anyone?" "No." The word was hard, uncompromising. "I could not. Not after my own turning. The thought of stealing someone's mortality, their very humanity." He shook his head. "Irina begged me near the end. She was dying of fever, pleading for me to save her. I refused. I allowed her to die human. I have both regretted it and thanked myself for it every single day since." Era touched his arm. "If I ask, will you refuse me?" He turned to face her fully, and in the strengthening light, she saw every line of pain on his face. "I honestly do not know. That frightens me because I want you to remain more than I want to protect your humanity. That, in truth, makes me a monster. Or it makes you honest." She stepped closer into the space that had become theirs. "Everyone desires things. You are brave enough to admit yours. There is nothing brave about selfishness. There is nothing selfish about wanting connection." She cupped his face, feeling the marble-like coolness of his skin. "You have been alone for 2 centuries. You are permitted to want someone to stay." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm, the one she had cut, now bandaged with strips from his shirt. "You make it sound so simple. You want me to stay?" "I want to stay. Everything else is just negotiating terms." His laugh was soft, surprised. "You would negotiate eternity like a business contract?" "Why not? It is my eternity too. She pulled him down the ridge toward the city. Come on. Show me this sanctuary of yours. Teach me how to exist in your world. We have, she calculated, 2 days before the council's deadline. That is sufficient time to learn the fundamentals, complete my offering and plan our next move. We, he said, testing the new language. I have been using it for so long, I had forgotten we. They reached the city as the sun crested the horizon. Constantine winced, pulling a hood over his face, and led her through waking streets to a building that appeared derelict from the outside but hummed with life within. Inside it was elegant, velvet furniture, dim lighting, soft music. Humans reclined in various states of languid satisfaction, while vampires fed with a clinical, detached courtesy. No violence, no force, just transaction and mutual benefit. They pay well? Era asked, watching a vampire delicately feed from a young man's wrist. Extremely well. And they rigorously screen donors for health, consent, and coercion. Constantine nodded to a stern-looking woman at a desk. Madame Orlova runs the tightest operation in the territory. If she suspects a vampire of using influence or force, they are permanently banned. Constantine, Orlova's voice was warm. It has been weeks. And you have brought a companion, the marked one unless I'm mistaken. Word travels swiftly. Dmitri has been scouring the city for her, offering rewards. She studied Era with sharp eyes. You are braver than you appear, girl. Most humans run from what you are deliberately walking toward. I am tired of running. Era met her gaze steadily. He says you aid vampires who prefer consent. Does that extend to transformation? Blunt. I appreciate that. Orlova's smile was approving. Yes. If you are contemplating the change, I can provide resources, literature, counseling, and trial exchanges to test your body's reaction. Too many vampires turn humans on impulse, and the new vampire cannot cope. Suicide rates are high among those turned without preparation. Suicide. Era looked at Constantine. Daylight, he said quietly. The first time you see the sun and it truly burns. Some newly turned simply cannot reconcile what they have become. They walk into the dawn to end it. The casual horror of it shocked her. How do you endure it? Never seeing the sun again? You find other lights. His eyes found hers. Or you remember the sun was never that warm anyway. They spent the day in Orlova's sanctuary. Constantine educated her on the architecture of vampire society, the 5 great houses, the mediating council, the lawless rogues, and the ancient laws written in blood oaths. He taught her how to sense vampires by their unnatural stillness, by the absence of body heat. He taught her the formal court greetings that might one day save her life. He taught her that vampires could be killed, by fire, total blood loss, or decapitation, but were otherwise remarkably difficult to end. And the sun, she asked as afternoon faded, why does it burn you? We are now creatures of still blood. The sun's energy forces blood into motion, makes it heat up. The clash between still blood and solar heat creates profound pain. He smiled faintly. Though some ancient ones can tolerate the dawn, tolerance is built over centuries. Will I be able to walk in daylight? Eventually, perhaps. If you are strong enough, disciplined enough. He reached across the table where they sat, books spread between them. But it could be decades of burning before that tolerance develops. Are you ready to surrender the sun for decades? She considered her village, the dawn gathering she had attended out of duty, the sun rising over fields she had worked without passion. I think I have been living in the shadows for a long time. At least with you, the darkness has company. His hand tightened on hers. You say things that make it difficult for me to remember why I should talk you out of this. Then stop trying. She stood, pulling him up. I am not afraid of you, Constantine. Not your hunger, not your darkness, not your past. Show me what you fully are. I want to see the monster before I choose to become one. Something flickered in his eyes, vulnerability and desperate hope tangled together. Are you absolutely certain? More certain than anything in my life. She stepped close enough to feel the perpetual coolness radiating from him. Show me. And he did. His eyes flooded with full amber, pupils dilating. His lips parted and she saw his fangs extend, sharp, elegant, deadly. He moved with a subtle, non-human speed, gently pinning her against the wall, and she felt the predator in him fully present for the first time. This, he whispered against her throat, is what I am. This hunger, this profound need, this thing that could drain you dry and feel only satisfaction. Her pulse hammered against his lips. But you won't. No. He pulled back, eyes closing, his fangs retracting with visible effort. Because I choose not to. Every day, every moment, that is all any of us truly are. Choices made repeatedly despite our nature. She pulled his head down and kissed him fiercely. Then I choose you, monster and man. All of it. Even if it costs your humanity, especially then. She smiled against his lips. Because humanity gave me nothing but altars to kneel on. Let me be a monster who stands. Night fell over the city, and with it came the weight of the decision. They sat in a private, candlelit room provided by Orlova, intimate, with the ritual implements laid out on a table like surgical tools. A silver knife, ceremonial and ancient, a black glass chalice, and sealing wax to seal his blood, the tools of either offering or transformation, depending on Era's final choice. The first exchange can happen tonight, Constantine said, his voice careful and controlled. If you are truly certain. But once we commence, the bond will begin to form. You will feel everything I feel. There is no privacy in it. I do not desire privacy from you. Era examined the knife, its edge catching the candlelight. How exactly does it work? I open a vein, usually the wrist. You drink until you sense the change taking hold. The heightened senses, the strength, the initiation of the bond. He hesitated. It is profoundly intimate. Some compare it to a vulnerability akin to sex. And you have never done this in 2 centuries. Never. He met her eyes. I have fed from consenting humans, but I have never shared my blood. That is transformation territory, and I have avoided it like a plague. Until now. Until you. He reached for her hand. Era, I need you to grasp this. If we complete all 3 exchanges, you will be utterly vulnerable during the transition. You will die fully, then wake with the hunger. If you cannot bring yourself to feed, you will die permanently. Are you prepared to kill for your first meal? The question hung heavy in the air. Would I have to kill? No. You would simply feed until satisfied. But most new vampires lack control. They accidentally drain their first meal completely. His face was grim. That's why I have always fed at the bloodhouse. Clean donors who understand the risks. You would have the same alternative. But the hunger is most powerful during the first week. You might not be able to stop yourself. Era absorbed this information. So, I would potentially become a killer? Unless your self-control is exceptional. Or unless. He trailed off. Unless what? Unless you fed from me. The words were delivered roughly. A vampire can sustain another vampire temporarily. It's rare, generally reserved for absolute emergencies. But if you fed from me during your first hunger, you wouldn't require human blood immediately. It would buy you time to develop control. Would that hurt you? His smile was gentle. Yes, but I would heal. And I would much rather be harmed than watch you accidentally take a life and then hate yourself for it. The sheer generosity of the offer stunned her into silence. Here was a creature who had been turned brutally, who had killed during his own first hunger, offering to endure pain so that she wouldn't bear the same burden of guilt. You truly meant it, she said quietly. When you said you'd spent 17 years trying to offer me a choice. I mean, everything with you is about choice. He stood, pacing the small room. But you don't have to transform. We could complete your offering instead. You give your blood freely, speak the words of release, and I am absolved of the debt. You remain human, live your mortal life. I would protect you from Dimitri, from the council. You could have everything you deserve, except. He stopped abruptly. Except what? If I remain human, I will age and die in 50, 60 years if I'm fortunate. You will continue for centuries. That is not everything, Constantine. That is scraps. She stood, closing the distance between them. I don't desire 50 years. I desire forever with you. That is the choice I am making. You would relinquish your humanity for me. I would relinquish humanity for myself. She placed her hand over his silent heart. The girl who was offered up died in that village square 17 years ago. What walked away was something else, something waiting to become what she was meant to be. Perhaps I was always intended for this, for darkness and for forever. Perhaps you marked me because you recognized it. His hand covered hers. Or perhaps I cursed you because I am a selfish creature who wanted one thing in his long existence to be purely chosen. Then allow me to choose. She reached for the silver knife, presenting it to him. First exchange tonight. Not because I am fleeing, not because I am forced, but because I want to become what you are. Constantine accepted the knife with shaking hands. It was the first time she had seen him truly afraid. If we do this, I will be bound to you. Not by blood oath, but by something far deeper. I will sense when you are hurt. Know your location. Feel your emotions and you will feel mine. 200 years of loneliness, regret, and hunger. Are you ready for that weight? Are you ready for mine? She smiled. 17 years of being defined by one moment. Of being marked and set apart, of watching everyone else live while I waited for something I couldn't name. Maybe it was you. Maybe it was this. He cupped her face, searching her expression for any hint of doubt. Finding none, he made his decision. Sit. He guided her to a chair, then knelt before her, the ancient vampire kneeling like a supplicant. I will make the cut. You drink until you feel a warmth spreading through your chest. That is when you stop. Too much, too fast can overwhelm your system. I trust you. Those 3 words unmade him. She saw it in the way his eyes closed, the way his breath unnecessarily caught. You shouldn't, but I am grateful that you do. He drew the knife across his wrist in one fluid motion. Black blood welled, and the scent of it hit her. Copper and cold earth and something indefinably otherworldly. He raised his wrist to her lips. Drink, he whispered. And let me feel you finally choose. Era hesitated for only a fraction of a second, then pressed her mouth to his wrist and drank. The blood was utterly unlike anything she had expected. Cold, yes, but alive somehow, electric, singing through her veins like lightning. Power flooded her system and she felt it instantly, strength building in her muscles, her vision sharpening until she could distinguish individual dust motes in the candlelight. And beneath it all, a connection forming like a solid bridge between their minds. She felt his emotions crash into her. Fear, hope, desperate longing, and a bone-deep loneliness cracking open to let something else pour in. Well, he loved her. He had loved the woman he had hoped she would become, perhaps since the night he had marked her. And she loved him back. It was suddenly brilliantly clear. This creature who had given her choice when everyone else offered only cages. Warmth bloomed in her chest and she pulled away, gasping. Constantine's wrist healed instantaneously, and he caught her as the sudden influx of strength and sensation momentarily overwhelmed her. I feel you, she whispered. Everything. Your fear, your hope. His voice was raw. And I feel yours. You are not afraid. You are exhilarated because you are finally choosing your own life. She laughed, the sound bright and strange. How long until the second exchange? Tomorrow night. You need time to process this first. He stood, pulling her up, and she realized she moved differently now. Lighter, stronger. How do you feel? Powerful. She looked at her hands, flexing fingers that could likely shatter stone now. Is this how you feel all the time? A diluted version. When the transformation is complete, it's stronger. He pulled her close and she could hear it now, the absence of a heartbeat in his chest, the stillness that marked him as other. You are halfway to becoming what I am. Tomorrow the bond solidifies. The day after. He trailed off. The day after I die and wake as a vampire. She finished for him. 2 days until I stop being human. Are you having second thoughts? Constantly, he confessed, but he smiled. But I am also feeling something I haven't felt in 2 centuries. What? Hope that I won't be alone anymore. He kissed her forehead, gentle and reverent. Sleep tonight. Tomorrow everything changes. But she didn't sleep. She stood at the window watching the city lights, feeling Constantine's presence in the back of her mind, a warm anchor that promised she would never be lost again. She touched her throat where the crescent scar gleamed silver, the mark of an offering interrupted. Soon to be the mark of a choice completed. Tomorrow she would give her blood. The day after her life. In exchange, she would take eternity and the vampire who had waited 17 years for her to be ready to claim it. Fair trade, she thought and smiled into the darkness. They came at dawn, House Volkov in full force. Era woke to the sound of splintering wood, to Constantine's fear flooding the deep bond they had just forged. He was already moving, pulling her from the bed, his eyes wild with a mix of fury and terror. They've breached Orlova's sanctuary, his voice was clipped and controlled. Dmitri is employing council authority. He's claiming you're a threat to territorial stability. Through the window she saw them, 20 vampires in black coats surrounding the building like a military unit. And at their center, Dmitri himself, holding a document sealed with wax, an official council decree. We can fight, she said. But Constantine shook his head. Not 20. Not in daylight when I'm weakened. He gripped her shoulders. Listen to me. They want you to complete your offering or die. If you complete it right now, bind me to your village's protection, I can invoke sanctuary rights and negotiate from a position of power. It's the only way to save both of us. That would enslave you. The bond pulsed with his resignation, his willingness to accept chains if it meant she survived. No, there must be another way. There isn't. He pulled her toward the door. The ritual is simple. You offer your blood, speak the covenant words, and I am bound. Better slavery than watching them kill you. But Era's mind was racing, fueled by the vampire blood singing in her system. She remembered Orlova's explanation of blood oaths, the ways vampire law could be manipulated by those who understood it. What if I complete my offering, she said slowly, but not to bind you. That won't satisfy the council. What if I offered my blood and used it to claim protection for myself? Not from you. From House Volkov. She met his eyes. I'm not fully human anymore. I have taken your blood. That makes me what exactly in vampire law? Understanding dawned on his face. Lionel. Between states, neither human nor fully vampire, but carrying vampire essence. You'd have a legal claim to petition the council directly for protection. Then that's what I will do. I will complete my offering not as a human demanding vampire servitude, but as a Lionel being claiming my right to choose my own allegiance. I choose you as protector freely as an equal. Not master and servant but partners. The door exploded inward. Dmitri strode through, flanked by his vampires. Behind them came Council Magistrate Yevgenia, looking grimly official. Era of No House, Konstantin Volkov. You are summoned to answer for territorial disruption. We will come peacefully, Konstantin began, but Era stepped forward. I claim right of offering. Her voice rang out clear and strong. As is my right under the old laws. Dmitri laughed. You have no rights, girl. You are human. She is Lionel, Yevgenia interrupted, scrutinizing Era with sharp interest. She has undergone the first exchange. That grants her legal standing to petition the council directly. She turned to Dmitri. The law is explicit. If she wishes to complete her offering under council supervision, we are bound to witness it. This is ridiculous. This is law, Yevgenia's voice sliced like a blade. Unless you wish to violate the very legal structures you invoke to justify this raid. Dmitri's face went blank with fury, but he stepped back. Fine. Let her make her toothless offering. It changes nothing. She will still be prey and Konstantin will still be bound by partial debt. We shall see. Yevgenia produced a ceremonial knife from her robes. Era, kneel before the council's witness. Konstantin, stand as the recipient. I shall conduct this by ancient right. They moved to the center of the room. Konstantin's fear pulsed through their bond, but Era felt only clarity. She had been offered up once and had refused. Now she would offer herself again, but on her own terms. She took the knife from Yevgenia and drew it across her palm without hesitation. Red blood welled, brighter than normal, tainted with Konstantin's black essence, creating something between human and vampire. I, Era of No House, marked in Lionel, offer my blood freely. She let it drip into the black glass chalice Yevgenia held. Not in servitude but in partnership. Not to bind but to choose. I claim Konstantin as my protector, my companion, my equal. I offer my blood and ask for his in return. A bond of mutual sacrifice, not a forced covenant. The room fell silent. That is not the traditional formula. Dmitri hissed. The traditional formula was written for humans demanding vampire service, Yevgenia stated slowly. She is rewriting it as a Lionel claiming partnership. Technically permissible if unprecedented. She turned to Konstantin. Do you accept her offering not as master but as equal? Will you share your blood, your protection, your life with her freely without compulsion? Konstantin's eyes were gold fire. I accept. Freely. Eternally. He took the knife and cut his own wrist, letting black blood mix with her red in the chalice. When Yevgenia swirled it, the blend turned deep crimson, the color of sunset, of roses, of something entirely new. Then let it be witnessed. The magistrate's voice carried immense power. The debt is paid. The offering is complete. No binding, no servitude. A blood partnership recognized under ancient law. The chalice shattered. Era felt it, a snap of connection deeper than the bond they had already forged. She felt Konstantin's shock, his joy, his desperate relief. And she felt something else, power flooding her veins. The combined force of her marked blood and his ancient essence creating something that made every vampire in the room step back. Impossible, Dmitri whispered. She's glowing. Era looked down. Her skin did glow, a faint silver light, the color of her scar radiating from within. The mark on her throat blazed like a brand. Fascinating. Yevgenia circled her slowly. The combination of marked blood and exchange has created something new. She is neither human nor vampire but a third state. A blood beacon. I have only read of such beings in myth. What does that mean? Konstantin moved quickly to Era's side, and when he took her glowing hand, the light intensified. It means, the magistrate stated carefully, that she cannot be turned. The mark and the exchange have stabilized in perfect balance. She is immortal but not vampire. She will never hunger, never burn in sunlight. She is simply other. The implications crashed through Era. She had wanted transformation to stay with Konstantin forever. Instead, she had become something else entirely, a creature outside all categories, bound to him by choice but not by nature. Can she be killed? Dimitri's voice was cold calculation. Theoretically, yes, Yevgenia replied, but she is protected by the blood partnership. To kill her would be to declare blood war on Constantine, which would require council approval for House Volkov to pursue. Yevgenia's smile was thin. And I don't believe the council will approve war over one Lionel girl, no matter how unprecedented. Dimitri's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. Yes, Constantine said quietly, pulling Era close. It is. She has made her choice. I have made mine. The debt is paid. The offering is complete. You have no further claim under vampire law or human tradition. For a moment, violence hung in the air. Then Yevgenia spoke. Dimitri, stand down or face council sanctions for harassment of a blood-partnered pair. Slowly, with murder in his eyes, Dimitri retreated. His vampires followed, leaving only Yevgenia, Constantine, and Era in the destroyed room. You, the magistrate said to Era, have just rewritten 3,000 years of vampire-human relations. Congratulations. You will either be celebrated or assassinated. Possibly both, Era said. As long as I'm not offered up again, I'll take my chances. Yevgenia's laugh was surprised and genuine. I think you'll do more than survive, child. I think you'll thrive. She nodded to them both, then dissolved into mist. Silence fell. Constantine turned to face Era, his hands shaking. You brilliant, terrifying creature. You just invented a new way to exist. We invented it, she corrected. She pulled him close, feeling their connection sing, together like everything else. He kissed her, deep and desperate, and she tasted the relief, the joy, the absolute terror of having something he couldn't bear to lose. When they finally broke apart, dawn was breaking through the shattered windows. Sunlight touched her glowing skin and she didn't burn. Oh, she whispered. Oh. Constantine stared as she stepped into the light, as it illuminated her silver radiance, as she stood in dawn for the first time as something more than human. I can walk in the sun, she said, wonder flooding her voice. I can walk in the sun and exist in the dark. I can be with you in both worlds. His expression crumbled into something too vast for words. 200 years of burning, of hiding from dawn. And now she stood before him, impossible and radiant. Proof that perhaps there were more ways to exist than he had ever imagined. Come here, she said gently, extending her glowing hand into the shadow where he stood. Let me be your light. 3 months later, Era returned to her village. She walked through the square where she had knelt as a 7-year-old, offering her throat to the darkness, and found it deserted. Most of the villagers had fled after House Volkov's rogues attacked in retaliation for Dimitri's humiliation. The few who remained watched from behind curtains, terrified of the girl who had returned glowing like moonlight, accompanied by a vampire who moved with predatory grace. They fear you, Constantine observed, his hand seeking hers. Good. She paused at the exact spot where she had made her offer 17 years prior. The stone still retained faint traces of old blood, hers from where she'd cut her palm in a childlike, desperate attempt to save the very people willing to sacrifice her. Fear ensures they won't attempt it again. They won't offer up another child, believing that monsters will merely take what is presented. The head elder emerged from his house, stooped, weighed down by guilt or age or both. Era, we believed you had perished. I did, she smiled, and in the daylight, her skin cast prismatic colors like stained glass. The girl you offered died the moment he marked her instead of claiming her. What has returned is something you possess no power over. We only desired protection. You desired servitude, Constantine's voice was soft, yet lethal. You wanted a vampire lord bound to your will. Instead, you created something that makes all of us uneasy. The council has recognized her as a blood beacon, a creature exempt from normal law. She possesses the authority to declare this territory independent, should she choose. The elder went pale. You wouldn't. Era considered it. She had spent the last 3 months learning what she was, what her abilities were. Her blood, mixed with Constantine's in that imperfect balance, granted her powers neither human nor vampire shared. She could walk in sunlight, heal rapidly, sense both vampires and humans, and most crucially her presence stabilized newly turned vampires, calming the initial hunger that drove many to accidental murder. Orlova had offered her a position mediating at the Bloodhouse. The council wanted her as a neutral party in territorial disputes. Even House Volkov, through gritted teeth, had sent covert overtures suggesting alliance over enmity. She had refused them all. I won't claim this territory, she told the elder. This place holds nothing I desire. But I will do this, I'll establish a sanctuary in the manor ruins. A place where vampires who reject hunting can find willing donors. Where humans fleeing violence can find refuge. Where the division between monster and man can blur into something new. You would do that even after what we did to you? Not for you. She looked at Constantine, who watched her with the loneliness of 2 centuries finally eased from his expression. For everyone who will be offered up after me so they have a place to run that isn't just another cage. They left the village as the sun reached its zenith. Era walked through the light that had once been forbidden to her vampire partner, her hand in his, their bond singing with shared purpose. At the valley's edge where the manor's burned stones still jutted from the scorched earth, they paused. It will take years to rebuild, Constantine said, but his eyes were full of hope. We have years. Era turned to him, pulling him close. We have forever, actually. The question is, what shall we build? Something better than what preceded it. He kissed her forehead, her cheek, then her lips. Something neither fully vampire nor human. Like you. Like us. A house for the in-between, she murmured. For the refused and the choosing, for everyone who doesn't fit into the boxes they're assigned. She laughed. House Dawn, because we exist in the liminal hours between dark and light, between monster and human, between what we were and what we are becoming. House Dawn. He tested the name. I like it, although it is ironic for a vampire. That is precisely the point. She pulled him toward the ruins, already envisioning their creation. We are the irony made flesh. The sacrifice that refused to be sacrificed. The vampire who refused to claim. The blood partnership that shattered 3,000 years of precedent. Why shouldn't our house stand in sunlight? They spent the day planning, she in the light, he in the shadows, meeting only in the spaces between. They would require builders, both human and vampire. They would need Orlova's network and Yevgenia's political leverage. They would have to convince the council that a neutral house could stabilize the territories more effectively than endless power struggles. It would be difficult, dangerous, and perhaps impossible. Era had never been more certain of anything. As sunset approached, Constantine pulled her to the highest point of the ruins, a partially collapsed tower that overlooked the valley. The sky was bleeding crimson and gold, the exact color their mixed blood had become in the chalice. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For choosing me. For not fleeing when every sensible instinct advised it. For being courageous enough to rewrite rules that have stood for millennia. He turned her to face him, and in the dying light, his eyes were pure amber. For making forever feel like a gift instead of a curse. You gave me forever first, she reminded him. That marked 17 years ago. You gave me the time to become strong enough to choose it. We gave each other everything. He kissed her as the sun touched the horizon. That's what partnership means. They stood there as day became night, as her glow intensified and his strength returned, watching the stars emerge over the valley that would become their territory. Not through conquest or blood oath, but through choice, building, and slow, persistent work. Somewhere in the distance, a village bell tolled. Somewhere, a newly turned vampire would wake screaming with the first hunger. Somewhere, a child might be kneeling in a town square offering blood to save the very people who should be protecting them. But here, in the ruins of an old life, something new was beginning. Era touched her throat where the crescent scar gleamed silver. The mark of an offering interrupted, completed, and transformed. The mark that had saved her by refusing to claim her. The mark that had become a bond instead of a brand. Ready to build our impossible house? Constantine asked, pulling her close as the first stars appeared. She smiled into the darkness that no longer frightened her, feeling his presence through the bond forged from blood, choice, and 17 years of patience. I've been ready since I was 7 years old. And you taught me that monsters could choose mercy. Then let's begin. And they did. 5 years later, the manor rose from the valley like a promise kept. Part Gothic fortress, part sunlit sanctuary, all defined impossibility. House Dawn, they named it, the place where light and dark met without conflict. Era stood in the great hall they had rebuilt, observing the evening crowd arrive. Vampires seeking willing donors. Humans seeking protection from rogue attacks. Newly turned vampires desperate for guidance through the first hunger. All of them drawn to the blood beacon who walked in both worlds. Constantine emerged from the shadows as he always did, and pulled her close. 5 years and he still held her as if she might vanish. 5 years and she still glowed when he touched her, their bond a visible entity for anyone to see. 37 residents this month, he murmured against her hair. Yevgenia reports we're the fastest growing house in the territory. Dmitri is apoplectic. Good, she smiled. Let him be furious. We are proving that there is another path. That not every exchange must be about power and servitude. Through the tall windows, sunset painted the sky the exact color of their mixed blood, crimson shot with silver. Their color, the color of sacrifice transformed into choice. A young vampire approached, newly turned and shaking with hunger. Era recognized the fear in his eyes, the terror of his new nature, the certainty that he would kill his first meal. "Come," she said gently, extending her glowing hand. "I will teach you control. You don't have to be what they tell you monsters are." As she led him away to the feeding rooms where Orlova's trained donors waited, Constantine watched with an expression that even after 5 years, still held profound wonder. His blood beacon, his partner, his proof that 2 centuries of loneliness could end not with possession but with choice. Outside, the last light died, and stars emerged over House Dawn. The girl who had been offered had built herself a kingdom, not of subjects but of the choosing, not of cages but of open doors. And in the center of it all, a vampire who had learned mercy and a woman who had refused to be sacrificed stood together, blazing in the darkness like a promise that some offerings, when refused, become something far more powerful than servitude. They become revolution.